Lynae is kind of an insane release. Let's talk about it. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Okay, so I kind of want to talk about why Kuro Games is absolutely crazy for making a character like Lynae, because I really didn't think they were going to do that, but they did. They made this character. This unit with the kit that she currently has is an actual Wuthering Waves character, and I am just kind of in awe at the fact that Kuro actually decided to make this unit, simply because she is that broken. Because I noticed this while I was making my other video regarding whether you should get Lynae or Mornier if you lost the 50-50 on the Lynae banner. We have never gotten a character like Lynae before, and that's what I hope to emphasize here today. She is something completely new in a sense. Now, I already knew that she was going to be able to negate the need to pull for specific second slot teammates for a lot of different DPS characters. This isn't really new information to us, and now that she's come out and we've been able to play her, we have seen that this is very much the case, and she is able to breathe some new power into some units. However, I will say this. In comparison to Mornier, who is an excellent addition to an already provably strong class of characters, that being third slot universal teammates, Lynae is the first of her kind. I would say the closest thing that we had to a character like this was Sanhua back in the 1.0 days. If you remember, and if you were around for the 1.x era of Wuthering Waves, you would know that Sanhua was quite the universal character. She was able to fit into a vast majority of teams simply because her rotation was so fast. So because of that, regardless of whether her buffs were that useful in the team or not, because her concerto rotation was just that fast, you were able to use her basically anywhere, and she was extremely strong. She single-handedly made Roshia a borderline useless pull whenever Roshia first came out, because for Camellia, you would rather have just used Sanhua instead. And even outside of Camellia teams, a DPS that very much did benefit from Sanhua's basic percent, you could still use her in so many different scenarios, and she would do excellently. Now, there were some cases in which you wouldn't want to use her, sure. For example, if you were playing a budget Jinchi team because you didn't have Yinlin, and you eventually didn't have Jojo whenever she came out, you would still rather use Yuanwu because he had coordinated attacks, and all around you really wanted those coordinated attacks in Jinchi teams. However, in a vast majority of other teams, Sanhua was still fully viable. Name basically any 1.x DPS character, and yes, Sanhua would have been somewhat viable. And there are other situations like Jian, where he already had a really good 4-star teammate in Mortefi. You wouldn't really have wanted to use Sanhua in that situation, because Mortefi was simply better. And at the time, we didn't think there was going to be a better second slot teammate for Jian than Mortefi, because he was practically designed for Jian. So sure, Sanhua wasn't necessarily best in slot everywhere, but she was very, very universal, and for a very long time was an absolutely incredible unit. However, eventually, Mortefi kind of started to take over her position in the meta. This is because we just got more and more heavy attack DPSs. I would say that this shift really started to take place around when Augusta came out, because her release definitely added a lot more value to Mortefi in particular, because while Yuno is a very good teammate for Augusta, obviously she's the best in slot after all, you very much can just use Mortefi, and that is going to be plenty strong. Galbraina also ended up preferring Mortefi as a budget option if you didn't have any other options for her, and same case with DPS Choyuan if you were able to land as S3. And then, if we look back a little further before Augusta came out, there was also Ferlova, who is currently the best DPS in the game, and she doesn't really use Sanhua or Mortefi, because as a budget option, you would straight up rather just use Donjin. So, for a while, Sanhua has not really been all that, but for a long time, she very much was that character. You could use her anywhere, and even if she wasn't really best in slot, she still had some best in slot teams in Camellia teams, and she had her situations in which she was good. But all around, a big part of what made her so great is the fact that you could easily use her anywhere, and she was so good for vigor management. And I would say that Lynae is basically like a 5-star Sanhua. She is a successor to what Sanhua used to be, and I find that absolutely insane. I never thought Kuro Games was going to make a 5-star Sanhua or anything like it. I thought that after Shorekeeper, they wouldn't really want to make more super universal 5-star characters, and they would instead focus on making more niche units that would tend to specific archetypes. Now, not all of them will be hyper niche, like Cantarella, for example, who is basically only really a Ferlova teammate, but something more like Yuno. Yuno is a really good heavy attack buffer, and she can also play as her own DPS. Things like that. I expected them to always stick to that. I didn't think that they were straight up going to make a 5-star Sanhua. And you have to consider, this is just how strong Lynae is on release. This is just how good she is right now. Right now, she was good enough to single-handedly decrease the value of all second slot teammates. It's to a point where for Frolova, for instance, yes, Counterella is better, but you would actually rather pull Cho Yuen for your Frolova. That's right, Frolova Lynae Cho Yuen is stronger than Frolova Counterella Roshia. Yeah. So I would say that Lynae, already being as impactful as she is only going to get more insane down the line when we eventually get a Toon Break DPS, because then she's going to have her abilities specifically taken advantage of by a character that was designed with her in mind. So not only did Kuro Games give us a character that is effectively going to be meta for a very long time, because yes, while Sanhua might not be that good anymore, she still has her use cases, sure, but she's not really all that anymore, she was still good for a very long time. Anyone who was there for that time knows what I'm talking about. Sanhua was really good, and Lynae is an upgraded version of that. So if you know what I'm talking about, you know that this character is here to stay. She is not going anywhere for a very long time. Now, I am making it sound like if you don't pull Lynae, your account is bricked, and that is far from the case. You should remember that we only have one Lynae, and I would say that with the new endgame mode, it does explain a little bit more why Kuro Games was so confident releasing a character like this, because ultimately, there is vigor management, and there are endgame modes where you can't just rely on one super universal second slot teammate. And here's the thing, I want to say I don't think they're gonna make another character like Lynae again, but I can't be certain about that. I didn't think they were going to make a second Shorekeeper either, but we're getting Mornier soon. Now, to be fair, I don't expect her to be as good as Shorekeeper, because Shorekeeper in particular is just that strong, but the fact that we're getting a character that is just within that class and could arguably even be comparable, we're just gonna have to wait and see whenever Mornier actually comes out, whenever we actually get the chance to play her, but the fact that we're even getting something that might possibly be like that is insane. Kuro is being quite bold here, and I do think that it is to tend to the new endgame mode, considering that that's a very horizontal-based endgame. And if you don't know what horizontal means, that basically just means having more characters as opposed to having a couple of really well-invested characters, whereas vertical would be having some characters, but they're very well-invested individually. So, I will say that I believe that it's possibly to tend to that new endgame. So there is that, and there is actually value in them doing this sort of thing, because you're still gonna have to pull for the other second slot teammates if you want to be able to get high scores in that game mode, if that's something that you care about. And even if you're just gunning for all the Astrites, it's 4 to 5 teams. You're gonna need to pull some more niche second slot teammates eventually, no matter what. Unless you do end up pulling for most DPSs that just don't really require that, because I will say that most modern DPSs, thankfully, are able to use a 4-star budget option. Frolova can use Donjin, DPS Cho Yuen uses more Tefi, Augusta uses more Tefi, Galbrena can use more Tefi. You can see what I mean when earlier I said that more Tefi stonks have been rising recently, right? And we did recently get Bu Ling for Carlotta teams. So that gives you another third slot teammate to work with. But I will say that I repeated the name Mortefi quite a few times there, so once again my point still stands. You are likely going to be pulling some more second slot teammates down the line. So I guess it makes sense as to why Kuro was so bold as to release a character like this, but in principle, it's still quite crazy to me because they didn't have to do this, but they did. It's a very great and awesome way to make an exciting 3.0 character, that's for sure. Basically, everybody except negative status mains are getting a character that they can play with their main DPS. That is really awesome, but just, wow. I didn't think we were going to see a 5-star Sanhua, but okay, here we are. 5-star Sanhua, let's go. We're just in that position. We are just in the world where a 5-star Sanhua is in fact a thing that exists. Obviously, they do different things. Their kits are completely different. When I say that, I more so mean extremely hyper-universal second slot teammate, and Lynae is far better than Sanhua ever was, because here's the thing, sometimes Sanhua's buffs just didn't do anything for the character that she was supporting, whereas Lynae is always going to be able to provide something. Whether that be her damage dealt increase through her Resonance Liberation, static mist buffs, her personnel damage, so on and so forth, and just wait until we eventually are able to take more advantage of her Toon Break capabilities. The deal just keeps getting sweeter. So, with all that in mind, I think Kuro Games really knocked it out of the park with this unit. I think it's kind of insane that we ended up getting a unit like this. I'm happy about it. I think it's really cool that we got this. I'm just surprised that we got this, and I'm really emphasizing how insane this character is. I've definitely glazed her a lot, but the reason I do that is because we know how good Shorekeeper is, and she is a second slot Shorekeeper. She deserves the glaze. I would not push a unit this hard if I didn't think that they were worth the push. I am very honest with unit value. I will be honest and say Chisa and Roshia just aren't good pulls, for instance. However, that also means that on the flip side, I will be very honest when a character like this is as broken as she is. She is very, very good, and she is 100% worth your pulls. Though this video wasn't really to convince you to get her or anything, I feel like most people are already aware of her value at this point. I am more so just trying to point out that they made a 5-star Sanhua in terms of flexibility, and I just think that's kind of insane. Hopefully this video was able to tell you why Lynae is an absolutely insane decision from Kuro Games. This has been Juice, signing out, and you know what? I hope Kuro continues to be insane in the future. This is all